Hey Crimson Pack, welcome back to the channel. My name is Noktulam Selego and thank you so much for tuning in. For those who are recently joined us, welcome to the family. For those who don't know, for those who are clicking on anything related to my channel for the first time, please note that the videos on my channel are written with the assistance of AI, straight from my mind and with the help of AI, so that the English is on point, and also narrated with AI, as English is not my first language. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe.
The iron manacles bit into my wrists, the cold metal a familiar sting against my bruised skin. The enemy pack's camp sprawled before me, a maze of tents and firelight under a sky bruised with dusk. I stood among the other captives, my head bowed, my body aching from the march after our village fell. The Ashenfang pack had no mercy for omegas like me, slaves bartered, beaten, and discarded. My name, Tessa, meant nothing now. I was a prize, a spoil of war. "Move," a guard snarled, shoving me forward. I stumbled, catching myself on knees scraped raw. The other captives avoided my gaze, their fear a mirror of my own. We'd heard of Alpha Fenric Dorn, the Ashenfang's leader, whose name was a curse whispered in our village. They said he broke souls as easily as bones, his wolf a beast that craved dominance. The tent flap opened, and I was pushed inside. The air was heavy with the scent of leather and smoke. He sat at a rough-hewn table, his broad shoulders filling the space, his dark hair falling into eyes that gleamed like storm clouds. Fenric. His presence pressed against me, a weight that made my knees tremble. "You," he said, his voice a low growl. "What's your name?" "Tessa," I whispered, my throat dry. I kept my eyes on the ground as I'd been taught. Never challenge an alpha. Never draw attention. "Look at me," he commanded. I lifted my gaze, expecting cruelty. Instead, his eyes held something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or something darker I couldn't name. "You're mine now," he said. "A war bounty. Do you understand what that means?" I nodded, my heart hammering. I knew what alphas did with omegas like me. I'd borne the bruises of my last master's hands, the scars hidden beneath my tattered dress. But Fenric's gaze wasn't like the others. It was too intense, too searching, as if he saw more than the broken thing I'd become. "Take her to the holding tent," he told the guard. "Clean her up. She's not to be touched." As the guard led me away, I risked one last glance at Fenric. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched on the table. For a moment, I thought I saw conflict in his eyes, but I dismissed it. Alphas didn't feel conflict. They took what they wanted, and I was nothing but a prize to be claimed. The holding tent was small, the air stale. A woman with graying hair brought a basin of water and a cloth, her hands gentle as she cleaned the dirt from my face. "You're lucky," she murmured. "He doesn't usually spare captives." Lucky. The word felt like a mockery. I clutched the thin blanket she gave me, my body shaking not from cold, but from the weight of my new reality. Fenric Dorn owned me now, and I knew better than to hope for kindness. The holding tent was a prison of canvas and shadow, the flickering torchlight casting monsters on the walls. I curled into a corner, the blanket barely shielding me from the chill seeping through the ground. My wrists still burned from the manacles, but the woman, Lyra, she'd called herself, had removed them, leaving only red welts. She'd left me with a clean shift and a bowl of thin stew, but my stomach churned too much to eat. Sleep wouldn't come. Every rustle outside the tent made me flinch, expecting rough hands or worse. I'd learned to anticipate pain in my old pack, where my status as an omega made me a target for every cruel whim. My mother had been the same, broken by men who saw us as less than human. When she died, I'd inherited her place, her scars, her silence. Footsteps approached, heavy and deliberate. I pressed myself against the canvas, my breath shallow. The tent flap opened, and Fenric stepped inside, his silhouette filling the entrance. My heart stuttered. He was even larger up close, his presence suffocating. He carried a lantern, its light catching the sharp angles of his face. High cheekbones, a jaw carved from stone. "You didn't eat," he said, glancing at the untouched stew. "I wasn't hungry," I lied, my voice barely audible. He crouched, setting the lantern down, his eyes locking onto mine. "Don't lie to me, Tessa. You'll need your strength." "For what?" The words slipped out, sharper than I intended. I braced for a blow, but none came. His lips twitched, almost a smile. "To survive me." The words sent a chill down my spine, but his tone wasn't cruel, just matter of fact, as if breaking me was a task he'd already planned. Yet his eyes betrayed him again, flickering with something I couldn't place. Doubt. Regret. I pushed the thought away. Alphas didn't feel such things. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice trembling. He studied me, his gaze moving over my face, my hunched shoulders, the way my hands gripped the blanket. I haven't decided yet, he said finally. But you're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone already broken. He stood, towering over me. You're not. Not yet. He turned to leave, but paused at the flap. Eat, Tessa. That's an order. Then he was gone, the lantern's light fading with him. I stared at the stew, my hands shaking. His words echoed in my mind. Not broken, not yet. Was he warning me or testing me? I forced a spoonful to my lips, the taste bitter but grounding. If Fenric thought he could break me, he'd learn I'd survived worse. I'd learned to hide my strength, to bury it deep where no one could touch it. But as I lay in the dark, his storm-gray eyes haunted me, and I wondered if I'd met a predator even my strength couldn't outlast.
Her scent lingered in my nose, sharp and sweet, like wildflowers after rain. It was maddening the way it coiled around my wolf, waking instincts I'd buried long ago. Tessa Varn, the Omega war bounty, wasn't supposed to be this unsettling. I'd expected a cowering shell, a vessel for my pack's needs, not a woman whose green eyes held fire beneath fear. I paced my tent, the maps and battle plans on my table forgotten. My wolf growled, restless, urging me to return to her, to claim what was mine. I'd built the Ashenfang pack on strength, fear, and loyalty earned through blood. My father had been a tyrant, his rule a lesson in cruelty I'd vowed to refine, not repeat. Yet here I was, planning to break a woman whose only crime was surviving her pack's fall. The thought twisted in my gut, but the pack demanded an heir, and an Omega was the surest path. Tessa was healthy, unclaimed, her file noting no defects. She was perfect for the task. So why did my wolf snarl at the idea? I'd seen her flinch in the holding tent, her body braced for pain she expected from me. It should have pleased me. Fear was control, and control was power. But instead, it stirred something dangerous, a need to shield her that clashed with my intent. My wolf recognized her not as prey, but as something else, something I refused to name. A knock broke my thoughts. Kael, my beta, stepped inside, his face grim. The Council's restless, Fenric. They want to know your plans for the Omega. They'll know when I decide, I snapped, my voice sharper than intended. Kael raised an eyebrow. She's got you rattled. She's a means to an end, I said, but the words felt hollow. The pack needs an heir. She'll serve that purpose. He studied me, his silence heavier than words. Careful, Alpha. You're looking at her like she's more than that. I growled, my wolf bristling. Mind your place, Kael. He held up his hands, backing off. Just saying what I see. She's not like the others. There's fight in her. He left, and I poured a glass of whiskey, the burn grounding me. Kael was right. Tessa wasn't like the other captives, broken before. They reached me. Her defiance, veiled by fear, was a spark I wanted to crush and nurture in equal measure. My wolf wanted her safe, her scent a call I couldn't ignore. But an alpha didn't bend to instinct. I'd break her, mold her into what the pack needed. Yet as I drained the glass, her eyes haunted me, and I wondered if breaking her would break something in me too.
Morning light seeped through the tent's seams, painting stripes across my face. I'd barely slept, Fenric's words, not broken, not yet, looping in my mind. They weren't a threat, not exactly, but a promise of something I couldn't predict. Lyra returned with a tray of bread and broth, her eyes kind but guarded, like she pitied me. She unbound my wrists, the welt stinging less today. Eat, she said softly. The alpha insists. I took the bread, tearing it slowly. Why does he care if I eat? Lyra's lips pressed thin. He's not like the others. But don't mistake that for weakness. Her words echoed my own fears. Fenric's attention was a puzzle, each piece sharper than the last. After she left, I ate, the food settling my stomach, but not my nerves. I was still chewing when the tent flap opened, and Fenric entered, his presence stealing the air. He wore a dark tunic, his arms corded with muscle, his eyes scanning me like I was a map he couldn't read. "You look better," he said, his voice low. "Lyra's taking care of you?" I nodded, clutching the bread like a shield. "Why am I here, Alpha?" "Truly." He leaned against the tent pole, crossing his arms. "You're a war bounty, Tessa. My pack needs an heir. You're suitable." The word landed like a stone. Suitable. A vessel, nothing more. Yet his eyes lingered, not on my body but my face, as if searching for something. "And after that?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "What happens to me?" His jaw tightened. "That depends on you. On how well I break." I couldn't stop the bitterness in my tone. His eyes darkened, but he didn't snap back. "On how well you adapt. This pack doesn't tolerate weakness, but it rewards strength." I laughed, a hollow sound. "Strength? I'm an Omega." My last pack beat that out of me. He stepped closer, and I flinched, hating myself for it. But he stopped, his hands unclenching. "They didn't," he said quietly. "I see it in you, Tessa. Buried, but there." His words were a blade, cutting too close to the part of me I'd hidden for years. I wanted to scream that he didn't know me, that he couldn't see the girl who'd learned to shrink, to survive by becoming invisible. But his gaze held me, steady and unyielding, and I couldn't look away. "I'm giving you a room in the main compound," he said. "No more tents. You'll be safe there." Safe. The word felt like a trap. "Why?" I asked. "Why not keep me chained?" He hesitated, something flickering in his eyes. "Conflict, maybe." "Because I don't want you broken," he said finally. "Not yet." He left before I could respond, but his words stayed, heavy as the chains I'd worn. Safe, but at what cost? I was a prisoner still, just in a prettier cage. Yet as I followed Lyra to the compound, the memory of his gaze lingered, and I wondered if the danger wasn't in his cruelty, but in the kindness he dangled before me. The Ashenfang compound loomed like a fortress carved from nightmares, its stone walls rising against the gray sky. Lyra led me through iron gates, past guards whose eyes raked over me, their whispers sharp with judgment. My new room was a small chamber in the east wing, with a narrow bed, a wooden table, and a window barred with iron. It was more than I'd ever had, but the bars reminded me I was still a captive, no matter how soft the bedding. Lyra set a pile of clothes on the bed, simple dresses, a wool cloak, all in muted colors. "The Alpha ordered these for you," she said, her tone careful. "He wants you comfortable." Comfortable. Another word that felt like a lie. I touched the fabric, soft against my calloused fingers, and fought the urge to tear it apart. "What does he expect in return?" I asked. Lyra's eyes softened. "He's not what you think, Tessa. He's hard, yes, but there's more to him. Give it time." Time. I had none to give. I changed into a gray dress, the fit surprisingly perfect, and stood at the window, watching the courtyard below. Wolves patrolled, their movements sharp and disciplined. This was Fenric's world, a place of order built on fear. I wondered where I fit, what role he'd carved for me beyond suitable. A knock startled me. A young woman entered, her auburn hair braided tightly, her scent marking her as a beta. "I'm Mara," she said, her smile tight. "The Alpha sent me to show you the compound. He says you're to have some freedom." Freedom. Another trap. But I followed her, my bare feet cold on the stone floors. The compound was vast. Corridors lined with tapestries of snarling wolves, a dining hall that smelled of roasted meat, a library with shelves towering to the ceiling. Mara's chatter was clipped, her eyes darting to me with curiosity and something like pity. "Do they all hate me?" I asked as we paused by a garden, its roses wilted under early frost. "Not all," Mara said. "But Omegas, they're rare here. Some see you as a threat, others a tool." "A tool for what?" She hesitated. "The Alpha needs an heir. The pack's restless without one. You're convenient." Her words stung, but I nodded. I'd been a tool before, beaten, bartered, used. But Fenric's attention felt different, heavier. As we returned to my room, I saw him across the courtyard, speaking with a group of warriors. His eyes found mine, holding them for a moment that stopped my breath. Then he turned away, and I felt the weight of his gaze like a chain I couldn't see. Back in my room, I sat on the bed, my fingers tracing the locket I'd hidden beneath my dress. My mother's last gift, a reminder of who I'd been. Fenric thought he saw strength in me, but all I felt was fear. And yet his kindness, the room, the clothes, the freedom, was a puzzle I couldn't solve, and I feared the answer more than the chains.
Her scent followed me like a ghost, clinging to my skin even as I stood in the war room, surrounded by maps and the grim faces of my council. Tessa Varn was a complication I hadn't anticipated, a spark in the dark that my wolf couldn't ignore. I'd meant to mold her, to bend her to the pack's will, but every glance at her green eyes chipped away at my resolve. She was supposed to be a means to an end, not a woman who made my chest ache with something I'd long buried. "The Omega," Councillor Vren began, his voice rough with age. "You've given her a room, clothes, freedom. The pack talks, Fenric. They question your intent. Let them talk," I said, my tone sharper than I meant. "She's my bounty, my choice." Vren's eyes narrowed. "A choice that weakens you. An Omega with no lineage, no alliances, she brings nothing but a womb. And even that's unproven." My wolf snarled, claws itching to extend, but I forced it down. "She's healthy, strong. She'll bear an heir. And if she doesn't?" Kael interjected, leaning against the wall. "The pack's loyalty hinges on stability. No heir, no future. Some already whisper you're distracted." I glared at him, but he didn't flinch. Kael knew me too well, saw the cracks in the armor I'd worn since I took the Alpha's mantle at 22, after my father's death in battle. I'd forged this pack through blood and fear, but Tessa was unraveling that control. My wolf wanted her, not just as a vessel, but as mine. "My mate," the word was a blade, cutting through years of discipline. "She'll do her duty," I said, but the words tasted like ash. Duty. That's what I'd told myself when I ordered her cleaned, clothed, moved to the compound. But it wasn't duty that made me pause outside her tent last night, or that drove me to ensure her comfort. It was her eyes, haunted but unbroken, and the way they challenged everything I'd been taught about power. "See that she does," Vren said. Or, "The council will demand a replacement. The Blackthorn Pack's Alpha offers his sister, strong blood, political ties." The thought of another Omega in Tessa's place made my wolf roar. "No," I said, my voice a low growl. "Tessa stays." The council exchanged glances, their silence heavy. I dismissed them, needing air, needing space from their doubts and my own. Outside, I caught sight of her across the courtyard, her grey dress catching the wind as Mara led her back to her room. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, the world stilled. My wolf urged me to go to her, to erase the fear I saw there, but I turned away. I was Alpha, not a lovesick boy. Yet as I walked away, her scent lingered, and I knew breaking her might cost me more than I could afford.
The compound's corridors felt like a labyrinth, each turn watched by eyes that judged me. I'd been here 3 days, and the whispers followed me like shadows. War bounty. Omega. Weak. Mara had shown me the kitchens, the training grounds, the healer's quarters, but every step reminded me I was an outsider. The Pax Omegas were few, kept under tight control, and I was a curiosity, a slave elevated to a room in the Alpha's stronghold. It made me a target. I sat by my window, the barred view showing a courtyard alive with activity. Warriors trained, their shouts echoing, while servants scurried with supplies. I'd seen Fenric only once since our move, his gaze locking onto mine before he turned away. His absence was a relief and a wound. His words, not broken, not yet, haunted me, but so did his actions. The clothes, the room, the food. They were kindnesses I didn't trust, each one a debt I'd have to pay. A knock broke my thoughts. Mara entered, her face tense. "The Alpha wants you at dinner tonight, in his private dining room." My stomach twisted. "Why?" She shrugged, but her eyes held pity. He didn't say. "Wear the blue dress. It's appropriate." Appropriate. For what? I nodded, my hands trembling as I changed into the blue dress. its fabric softer than anything I'd ever worn. It clung to my curves, making me feel exposed despite its modesty. I braided my hair, my fingers clumsy, and touched the locket hidden under my collar. "Stay strong," my mother's voice echoed in my mind. The dining room was smaller than the main hall, its table set with candles and plates of roasted venison and root vegetables. Fenric stood by a window, his back to me, his broad frame outlined by firelight. He turned as I entered, his storm-gray eyes sweeping over me. I froze, expecting coldness, but his gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. "You look good," he said, his voice rough. He pulled out a chair, a gesture so foreign I hesitated before sitting. "Why am I here?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He sat across from me, pouring wine into my glass. "To eat, to talk. You're not a prisoner in that room, Tessa." I stared at the wine, its red glow catching the candlelight. "I'm still your captive." His jaw tightened. "You're my responsibility." "There's a difference." "Is there?" I met his gaze, defiance sparking despite my fear. "You said you'd break me. How is that different?" He leaned back, his eyes searching mine. "I thought that's what I wanted, to make you bend to the pack's needs. But," he paused, his fingers tightening on his glass, "you're not what I expected." "You keep saying that," I said, my voice sharp. "What does it mean?" He was quiet, then said, "It means I'm starting to question what I want." The admission hung between us, heavy and dangerous. I wanted to push, to demand answers, but the door opened, and a servant brought dessert, breaking the moment. As we ate in silence, I felt his gaze like a touch, and I wondered if the real danger was in believing he could be more than my captor. Days blurred into a routine of guarded freedom. Mara escorted me through the compound, showing me the stables, the armory, the gardens where herbs grew in neat rows. The pack watched me, some with curiosity, others with disdain. I was the Alpha's bounty, a role I didn't understand. Fenric's presence was scarce, but his orders shaped my days. Meals delivered, books left on my table, a cloak for the chilly evenings. Each act felt like a test, a way to soften me before the breaking he'd promised. This morning, I found a poetry book on my table, its pages worn but cherished. A note in sharp handwriting read, "Thought you might like this. F." My fingers traced the words, my chest tightening. Why did he care what I liked? I'd learned to read in stolen moments, my mother teaching me before her death. Books were my escape, but this one felt like a bridge to a man I couldn't trust. I was reading by the window when a commotion outside drew my attention. Fenric stood in the courtyard, arguing with a tall woman whose blonde hair gleamed like gold. Her posture screamed authority, her gestures sharp as she pointed toward the east wing, toward me. His face was thunderous, but he didn't raise his voice, his control a stark contrast to her agitation. When she stormed off, he looked up, his eyes finding mine through the bars. I froze, caught, but he only nodded before turning away. That evening, he sent for me again. The dining room was the same, candles flickering, but his mood was heavier. He wore a dark shirt, sleeves rolled up, revealing scars on his forearms, marks of battles I could only imagine. I sat, my hands clasped to hide their trembling. "Who was that woman?" I asked, unable to stop myself. He raised an eyebrow, pouring wine. "Lyra Blackthorne, alpha of a neighboring pack. She's persistent." "About me?" He nodded, his jaw tight. "She thinks you're a mistake, a weakness." Her words echoed Elena's from another story, and I wondered if all alphas face such challenges. "Do you agree?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. "No, but the pack listens to her kind. They want strength, alliances. You're unconventional." "Unconventional." I repeated, the word bitter. "You mean weak?" "I mean unexpected," he said, his voice low. "You've survived things that would break most. That's not weakness, Tessa." His words stirred something in me, a warmth I didn't want. "You don't know what I've survived," I said, looking away. "Then tell me." I hesitated, the weight of my past pressing against my ribs. "My father sold me to my last pack when I was 15. They used me, cleaning, serving, worse. I learned to disappear, to take the blows and keep breathing. That's not strength. That's survival." He was silent, his eyes darkening with something like anger. "No one will touch you here," he said finally. "Not while I'm alpha." The promise was a chain and a shield, and I didn't know which scared me more. As we ate, his gaze softened, and I felt the crack in my armor widen, letting in a dangerous hope.
Tessa's words cut deeper than any blade. Sold at 15, used, beaten. Her past was a mirror to the parts of me I'd buried, the boy who'd watched my father crush anything soft in our pack. I sat across from her, the candlelight catching, the green of her eyes, and my wolf howled, demanding I protect her, claim her, make her mine. But claiming an Omega wasn't just instinct, it was politics, a declaration to the pack. And Tessa wasn't ready. Neither was I. Lyra's visit had stirred the council, their doubts a growing storm. They saw Tessa as a liability, a slave with no bloodline to strengthen our pack. I'd argued she was healthy, capable, but their whispers echoed my father's voice. An alpha takes what he needs, no more. I'd vowed to be different, but the pack's hunger for an heir pressed against me, and Tessa was the key, whether I wanted her to be or not. You promised no one would touch me, she said, her voice soft but edged with steel. But what about you? The question hit like a blow. I leaned back, gripping my glass to keep my hands still. I won't take what you don't give, I said, but the pack expects an heir. That's the truth of it. Her lips pressed, thin, her hands tightening in her lap. And if I refuse, then you stay here safe until you choose otherwise. The words were a lie to myself. My wolf wouldn't let her go, not now. Not when her scent filled my lungs, her defiance sparking something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. She looked away, her fingers brushing the locket at her throat. I don't know how to choose, she said. I've never had the chance. Then I'll wait, I said, surprising myself. But I need you to understand, Tessa. This pack is restless. They'll test you and me to prove you're worthy. Worthy of what? Her eyes snapped to mine, fierce despite her fear of standing beside me. Of bearing my heir. Of being... I stopped, the word mate too heavy, too raw. My wolf growled, insisting it was true. But I couldn't say it. Not yet. She stood, her chair scraping softly. I'm not a prize to be won, Fenric. I'm not yours, to break or keep. You're wrong, I said, standing to meet her gaze. You're not a prize. You're a choice. One I'm starting to realize I can't make alone. She froze, her breath catching. For a moment, I thought she'd run. But she stayed, her eyes searching mine. What do you want from me? She whispered. I want you to trust me, I said, my voice rough. But I don't know if I deserve it. She didn't answer, but as she left, her scent lingered, and my wolf paced, restless with need. I'd meant to break her, but she was breaking me, piece by stubborn piece, and I wasn't sure I wanted to stop her.
The compound's routine was a fragile comfort, each day weaving me deeper into its rhythm. Mara taught me to mend clothes, a skill I'd learned young, and I found solace in the steady work of needle and thread. But the pack's eyes never softened. I was the outsider, the Omega who'd caught the Alpha's attention, and their whispers grew sharper, laced with resentment. Fenric's kindness, books, meals, a room, was a shield, but it also marked me, a target for those who saw me as unfit. This morning, Mara arrived with a frown. The council's called a meeting. They want you there. My heart sank. Why? They're testing you, she said, her voice low. Fenric's choice has stirred trouble. They need to see if you're worthy. Worthy. The word was a chain, pulling me back to my old pack, where worth was measured in how much pain I could endure. I dressed in the blue gown, my hands steady despite the fear clawing my chest. The locket at my throat was my anchor, a reminder of my mother's strength. I'd survived before. I could do it again. The council chamber was a cavern of stone and shadow, its long table ringed by stern faces. Fenric stood at the head, his posture rigid, his eyes finding mine as I entered. Lyra Blackthorne was there, her blonde hair gleaming, her smile sharp as a blade. The counselors' gazes weighed me down, their judgment heavy as iron. Tessa Varn, the head counselor, Vren began, his voice cold. You've been given privileges unheard of for a war bounty. The pact demands proof you deserve them. I swallowed, my voice steady despite my racing pulse. Ascendancy. What kind of proof? Vren's eyes narrowed. Strength. Resilience. The ability to bear a strong heir. The first test is fire. Survive the flames of our judgment. My stomach twisted. A test of fire? I'd heard of such rituals in whispers. Trials meant to prove an Omega's worth through pain or endurance. Fenric stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. She's my choice. If you test her, you test me. Lyra laughed, a cutting sound. Your choice weakens us, Fenric. She's a slave, not a mate. Let her prove she can withstand our fire. The council agreed, and I was led to the courtyard, where a circle of coals glowed red-hot. The test was simple but brutal. Walk barefoot across the embers, a symbol of purifying weakness through pain. My knees trembled, but Fenric's eyes met mine, fierce with belief. You can do this, Tessa, he said softly. You're stronger than they know. I stepped forward, the heat searing my soles, each step a scream I swallowed. I thought of my mother, of Fenric's faith, of the girl I'd been who'd survived worse. I crossed the coals, my feet blistered but my head high, the pack's silence a grudging respect. Fenric caught me as I stumbled, his arms a shield against their doubts. I'd passed their test, but as he held me, I knew the real trial was still ahead, winning their trust and his heart. The pain in my feet lingered, each step a reminder of the coals I'd crossed. Lyra had bandaged them, her hands gentle but her eyes guarded, as if she expected me to crumble. I didn't. The council's test had been cruel, meant to break me, but I'd walked through fire and emerged whole. The pack's whispers had quieted, but their eyes still followed me, waiting for weakness. I refused to give it to them. Fenric hadn't left my side since the trial. He'd carried me to my room, his arms strong but careful, as if I were glass he feared to shatter. Now he sat across from me in my chamber, his storm-gray eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. Guilt, perhaps, or pride. He'd brought a tray of food, simple but warm, and set it on the table, his movements deliberate, like he was afraid to spook me. You didn't have to do that, he said, his voice low. I could have fought them. You did, I said, meeting his gaze. But they needed to see me, not just you. I'm not your shadow, Fenric. His lips twitched, almost a smile. No, you're not. You're more. The words stirred warmth in my chest, dangerous and unearned. I'd survived the fire, but trust was a harder test. What does that mean? I asked, my voice sharp. You keep saying I'm not what you expected, but what am I to you? A duty. A prize. He leaned forward, his scars catching the light. You're a choice, Tessa. One I didn't plan to make. His words were a puzzle, each one a weight I wasn't ready to carry. I touched the locket at my throat, grounding myself. I've never been anyone's choice, I said. I've been sold, used, taken. What makes this different? He stood, crossing to me, his presence filling the room. Because I see you, he said. Not just an Omega, not just a bounty. I see the woman who walked through fire and didn't flinch. I see your scars, Tessa, and they don't make you weak, they make you unbreakable. His words cut too close, peeling back layers I'd hidden even from myself. I wanted to believe him, but belief was a risk I'd learned to avoid. You don't know my scars, I said, my voice breaking. You don't know what they cost me. Then show me, he said, kneeling so we were eye to eye. Let me carry them with you. I shook my head, tears burning. You're an alpha. You take, you break. That's what I know. Not me, he said, his voice fierce. I won't take what you don't give. I swear it, Tessa. He reached for my hand, his touch warm but tentative. I didn't pull away, and the weight of that choice scared me more than the coals. As he left, promising to return, I felt the stir of something new. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it, fragile as a flame in the wind. My feet healed slowly, each step a reminder of the fire I'd faced. Fenric had ordered rest, sending Lyra with salves and bandages, but I couldn't stay confined. The compound's walls felt tighter each day, the pack's eyes a constant weight. Mara suggested the garden, a small oasis of green tucked behind the stone fortress. I followed her, limping slightly, craving air that didn't taste of captivity. The garden was quiet, its paths lined with herbs and late-blooming flowers, their scent sharp and grounding. I settled on a bench by a small pond, its surface rippling under the gray sky. Mara stayed nearby, her presence a mix of guard and guide. You did well, she said, her tone softer now. The pack respects strength, even in an Omega. Respect, I said the word bitter. They respect what I endured, not who I am. She nodded, her eyes distant. It's a start. Fenric's fighting for you, but the pack, they need more than his word. I clutched my locket, its cool metal a tether to my mother's memory. What does he want from me, Mara? Really? She hesitated, then said, he's changing. You're changing him. That scares some of them. Her words echoed Fenric's own, stirring the warmth I fought to suppress. I'd seen his scars, heard the edge in his voice when he spoke of his father's cruelty. He was an alpha, but not like the others. Not yet. Still, trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Footsteps crunched on the path, and Fenric appeared, his dark coat blending with the shadows. Mara slipped away, leaving us alone. He sat beside me, his warmth a contrast to the autumn chill. You shouldn't be walking yet, he said, his voice gruff but concerned. I needed air, I said, meeting his gaze. I'm not fragile, Fenric. I know, he said, his eyes softening. But you don't have to prove it every day. His words were gentle, but they stung. I do, I said. To your pack. To myself. He leaned closer, his scent, pine and earth, filling my lungs. You proved it in the fire, Tessa. They see you now. Do they? I asked, my voice sharp. Or do they see your choice, not mine? He was silent, his jaw tight. They'll learn. I'll make them. His certainty was a weight, both comforting and heavy. And if they don't, if they turn on you because of me. His eyes darkened, a storm brewing. Then they turn on us both. The word us stopped my breath. He reached for my hand, his touch careful, and I let him take it, my heart racing. I'm not asking you to trust me yet, he said, but I'm asking you to let me try to earn it. I nodded, the gesture small but heavy. As we sat by the pond, the quiet between us felt like a truce, fragile but real. I didn't trust him, not fully, but the possibility grew, like a seed in the garden's cold earth.
Tessa's hand in mine was a small victory, her warmth a spark against the cold of the garden. My wolf purred, content in a way I hadn't known possible, but the pack's unrest gnawed at me. They'd seen her cross the coals, seen her strength, but respect wasn't loyalty. The council's whispers grew louder, fueled by Lyra's poison, doubts about Tessa's worth, about my judgment. I'd built this pack on fear and order, but Tessa was a crack in that foundation, and my wolf wouldn't let me seal it. I'd left the war room an hour ago, Vren's voice still ringing in my ears. She's a distraction, Fenric. The Blackthorn Alliance could secure our borders, strengthen our bloodline. This Omega risks everything. I dismissed him. My growl, silencing the room, but his words lingered. The pack needed an heir, stability, and Tessa was a gamble, a choice my heart made, not my head. She sat beside me, her green eyes distant, her locket glinting at her throat. I wanted to know its story, the scars she carried, but pushing her risked breaking the fragile bridge we'd built. What are you thinking? I asked, my voice low. She glanced at me, her expression guarded. That your pack doesn't want me here, that I'm a problem you didn't expect. You're not a problem, I said, sharper than I meant. You're a challenge, one I chose. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. A challenge you might lose your pack over. The truth of her words cut deep. My father had taught me that an alpha's strength was in control, not sentiment, but Tessa unraveled that lesson. My wolf saw her as ours, her scent a call to protect, to claim. But claiming her meant defying the pack, risking the loyalty I'd bled for. I won't lose them, I said, more to myself than her. They'll accept you, or they'll answer to me. Her eyes searched mine, sharp with doubt. And if they don't? Lyra's offering them something I can't. Alliances, power. I'm just me. You're enough, I said, the words fierce. You walked through fire, Tessa. You're stronger than any alliance Lyra could bring. She looked away, her fingers tightening on the locket. Strength doesn't mean they'll want me. I'm an Omega, Fenric, a slave. You're mine, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. My wolf growled, claiming her in a way I hadn't dared voice. Not a slave, not a bounty, mine. Her breath caught, her eyes wide. Yours, she repeated, testing the word. What does that mean? It means I fight for you, I said. For us. Whatever it costs. She didn't answer, but her hand stayed in mine, her warmth a promise I clung to. As we sat in the garden's quiet, I knew the pack's whispers were a storm gathering on the horizon. I'd fight it for her, but I wondered if my wolf's claim would be enough to hold them, or if it would tear us both apart.
The garden's peace was a fragile thing, broken by the weight of Fenric's words. You're mine. They echoed in my chest, both a comfort and a chain. I'd never been anyone's, not in the way he meant. Not chosen, but taken, traded, broken. His claim felt different, but trust was a language I'd forgotten how to speak. Each kindness he offered, the room, the books, his touch, was a step toward something I couldn't name, and it terrified me. Mara came for me at dusk, her face tight. Lyra's back, she said. She's in the council chamber, stirring trouble. Fenric wants you there. My stomach twisted. Lyra Blackthorne, with her golden hair and sharp ambition, was a storm I couldn't weather. I dressed in the blue gown, its fabric a reminder of Fenric's care, and followed Mara through the compound's cold corridors. The council chamber was heavy with tension, the air thick with the scent of wax and distrust. Fenric stood at the head, his posture rigid, his eyes finding mine as I entered. Lyra stood opposite, her presence commanding, her smile a blade aimed at me. Tessa, she said, her voice honeyed but cutting. The firewalker. Impressive for a slave. The word stung, but I lifted my chin. I'm no one's slave now. Her laugh was sharp. You're Fenric's pet, nothing more. The pack needs strength, not a broken omega playing at mate. Fenric growled, stepping forward. Enough, Lyra. She's my choice. Insult her, you insult me. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Your choice weakens us, Fenric. My pack offers warriors, trade, stability. She offers nothing but a womb and a sob story. I flinched, her words echoing my own fears. I'm not here to weaken anyone, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. I crossed your fire. I'll face whatever else you demand. The counselors murmured, their eyes assessing. Vren spoke, his voice cold. Words are cheap, Omega. The pack needs an heir, and your worth is unproven. Lyra's alliance could secure our future. Can you? Fenric's hand found mine, his grip firm. She's proven enough, he said. Set another test, if you must. She'll pass it. Lyra's smile widened. A test of loyalty, then. Let her prove she's not just your whim, but a mate worthy of Ashenfang. The council agreed, their voices a chorus of doubt. My heart pounded, but Fenric's touch anchored me. You don't have to do this, he whispered as they set the date. I can stop it. No, I said, meeting his gaze. I need to. For me. His eyes softened, pride flickering in their storm-gray depths. Then we face it together. As we left the chamber, Lyra's gaze burned into me, her threat clear. She wanted me gone, and the pack's doubts gave her power. But Fenric's hand in mine was a vow, and I clung to it, knowing the next test would demand more than fire. It would demand my heart. The council's second test loomed like a storm cloud, its details vague but heavy with intent. Loyalty, they'd said, as if I owed them anything beyond survival. The pack's distrust was a weight I carried, their eyes following me through the compound, waiting for me to falter. Fenric had promised to face it with me, but his presence was both a shield and a reminder of the choice I hadn't made. You're mine, he'd said, and I wondered if I could ever be his without losing myself. I spent the morning in my room, the poetry book open on my lap, its words a refuge from the pack's judgment. Fenric's note still lay tucked inside, his handwriting a quiet claim. Thought you might like this. I traced the letters, my heart torn between gratitude and fear. His kindness was a puzzle, each piece drawing me closer to a man I wasn't sure I could trust. A knock came, and Fenric entered, his face drawn, his scars stark in the morning light. He carried a tray of bread and cheese, setting it down with care. You're quiet today, he said, sitting across from me. The test. I nodded, my fingers tightening on the book. What do they want from me, Fenric? To bleed for them. His jaw clenched. They want proof you're not just my choice, but theirs. Loyalty to the pack, not just to me. And what does that mean? My voice was sharp, fear edging it. Another walk through fire? He shook his head, his eyes heavy. A ritual of sacrifice. You'll offer something precious, a vow, a token, something that proves you'd put the pack above yourself. My hand went to my locket, the only piece of my mother I had left. And if I don't, his eyes darkened. They'll demand you leave. Or worse. The threat hung between us, cold and real. I stood, pacing to the window, the bars a reminder of my captivity. I've given everything, Fenric. What more can they take? He followed, his warmth close but not touching. They can't take what you don't give, he said. But I won't let them hurt you. You can't stop them, I said, turning to face him. You're alpha, but they're your pack. They'll turn on you if I fail. His hand reached for mine, tentative. Then we make sure you don't fail. His touch was warm, steady, but my heart raced. Why do you care? I asked. Why fight for me? Because you're not just an Omega, he said, his voice fierce. You're Tessa. You're the woman who's making me question everything I thought I was. His words broke something in me, a wall I'd built to survive. I let him hold my hand, his scars brushing my skin, and felt the stir of something dangerous, hope. As he left, promising to prepare me for the test, I clutched my locket, wondering if I could give it up, and what it would cost to prove I belonged, not just to the pack, but to him.
Tessa's fear was a blade in my chest, her question, why fight for me, echoing as I left her room. My wolf paced, restless, her scent a call I couldn't silence. She was more than a bounty, more than a duty, and every moment with her made that clearer. But the pack's demands were a chain around us both, their loyalty fraying as Lyra's whispers spread. They wanted an heir, a future, and Tessa was the key, but only if she passed their test. I strode to the war room where Kael waited, his face grim. Lyra's rallying the council, he said. They're calling the test a reckoning. If Tessa fails, they'll push for her exile, or your replacement. My wolf snarled, claws itching to tear through the threat. They won't touch her, I said. She's stronger than they know. Kael's eyes narrowed. And you? You're risking everything, Fenric. For an Omega you barely know. I know enough, I said, my voice low. She's not just an Omega, she's... I stopped, the word mate burning in my throat. My wolf had claimed her the moment I saw her, her green eyes a spark that lit something I'd thought dead. But claiming her openly meant defying the pack, risking the throne I'd fought to hold. Then prepare her, Kael said. The test is tomorrow. She'll need to give something real, something that proves she's Ashenfang, not just yours. I nodded, my mind on the locket she clung to, its weight more than metal. It was her mother's, her past, her strength. Asking for it would be like asking for her soul, but the pact demanded sacrifice, and I couldn't shield her from it. Not entirely. I found her in the garden, sitting by the pond, her fingers tracing the locket's edges. She looked up, her eyes guarded but bright, like emeralds catching the light. What's the test? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear beneath it. I sat beside her, my wolf calming at her nearness. A ritual, I said. You'll offer something precious to the pack, a vow of loyalty, sealed with a token. Something that proves you're one of us. Her hand tightened on the locket, her face paling. This, she whispered. I nodded, hating myself for it. It's what they'll respect. A piece of you, freely given. Her eyes searched mine, sharp with betrayal. You knew. I suspected. I admitted. I don't want to take it, Tessa. But the pack needs proof, she finished, her voice bitter. And you'll let them take it. I'll stand with you, I said, reaching for her hand. Whatever you give, I'll make it mean something. She pulled away, her eyes wet. It's all I have of her, she said. Of my mother. My chest ached, my wolf howling to protect her. Then we'll find another way, I said, though I knew the pack wouldn't bend. As I left her in the garden, her scent lingered, and I vowed to fight for her, even if it meant fighting my own. Pack.
The locket felt heavier than ever, its silver warm from my touch, A piece of my mother I'd carried through every blow, every betrayal. The pack's test demanded it. A sacrifice to prove I was more than Fenric's bounty, more than an omega. I sat in my room, the poetry book unopened, its pages a reminder of Fenric's kindness, now tainted by his role in this ritual. He'd promised to stand with me, but the pack's hunger for proof was a fire I couldn't escape. Mara came at dawn, her face drawn. "It's time," she said. "The council's waiting in the great hall." I nodded, slipping the locket under my dress, its weight a secret I wasn't ready to surrender. The blue gown felt like armor, but it couldn't shield me from what was coming. The great hall was a cavern of stone and firelight, the council seated in a semicircle, Lyra at their side, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Fenric stood at the center, his posture rigid, his storm-gray eyes finding mine. They held pride, but also fear mirroring my own. Vren stood, his voice cold. "Tessa Varn, you've crossed fire. Now we demand loyalty. Offer a token of your past, a vow to the pack's future." My hand went to my throat, the locket's outline burning through the fabric. "What kind of token?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Something precious," Lyra said, her smile sharp. "Something that proves you're Ashenfang, not an outsider." The air thickened, the pack's eyes heavy. I looked at Fenric, his face taut, and saw the conflict there. He wanted to protect me, but he couldn't stop this. I unclasped the locket, my hands trembling, and held it up, its silver catching the firelight. "This was my mother's," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "It's all I have of her, of who I was." The council leaned forward, their silence greedy. Lyra's smile widened, but Fenric stepped closer, his warmth a quiet anchor. "You don't have to give it," he whispered, low enough for only me to hear. "I do," I said, meeting his gaze. "Not for them. For me." I stepped to the fire at the hall's center, the flames licking the air. "I vow to stand with Ashenfang," I said, my voice clear. "To give my strength, my future, to this pack." I dropped the locket into the fire, its metal hissing as it melted, a piece of my soul burning away. The pack gasped, their respect grudging but real. Fenric caught me as I swayed, his arms steady. "You're enough," he murmured, his voice fierce. The council nodded, their doubts silenced for now, but Lyra's eyes promised more battles. As Fenric led me out, my chest hollow without the locket's weight, I felt both lighter and heavier. Free of my past, but bound to a future I hadn't chosen. His hand in mine was a vow of its own, and I clung to it, afraid to let go. The locket's loss was a wound that bled quietly, its absence a hole where my mother's memory had lived. I'd given it to the pack, my vow sealing their grudging respect, but the victory felt hollow. The great hall's fire had consumed more than metal. It had taken a piece of me I'd never get back. Yet Fenric's hand in mine was a tether, his warmth a reminder that I wasn't alone, even if I didn't fully trust the man who'd brought me here. Back in my room, I sat by the window, the bars a stark contrast to the freedom I'd earned. The pack's whispers had softened, but Lyra's presence lingered like poison, her promise of further tests a shadow I couldn't shake. Fenric entered without knocking, his face drawn, his scars stark in the dim light. He carried a small box, setting it on the table with care. "You didn't have to give it," he said, his voice rough. "I would have fought them." "You keep saying that," I said, my voice sharp. "But you didn't stop them. You let me walk into that fire." His eyes darkened, guilt flickering. "I thought you wanted to prove yourself." "I did," I admitted, my throat tight. "But it cost me everything." He opened the box, revealing a new locket, silver, simple, etched with a wolf's head. "It's not hers," he said, "but it's yours. A piece of you for Ashenfang." I stared at it, my chest aching. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Because you gave them your past," he said. "I want you to have a future." The gesture was a knife, cutting through my walls. I took the locket, its weight different but warm, and clasped it around my neck. "This doesn't replace her," I said, meeting his gaze. "But it helps." He nodded, his hand brushing mine. "I know what it cost you, Tessa. I'll make it worth it." His words were a vow, fragile but real. I wanted to believe him, to let his kindness fill the hole my mother's locket left. But trust was a step I wasn't ready to take. "What now?" I asked. "The pack's satisfied, but Lyra isn't." "She's a problem," he admitted, his jaw tight. "Her pack wants an alliance, and she'll push until she gets it, or breaks us." "Breaks us?" I repeated, the word heavy. "You mean me?" "I mean us," he said, his voice fierce. "You're not alone in this, Tessa." His hand stayed on mine, his scars a map of his own pain. I didn't pull away, letting his warmth anchor me. The new locket was a weight I could bear, a symbol of a future I hadn't chosen but couldn't deny. As he left, promising to face Lyra's next move, I felt the stir of something new. Not love, not yet, but a bond forged in fire, fragile but growing, like a seed breaking through stone.
Tessa's new locket gleamed at her throat, a small victory against the loss she'd endured. My wolf purred, content with her acceptance, but the pack's unrest was a storm I couldn't outrun. Lyra's return had lit a fuse, her words poisoning. The council's fragile acceptance of Tessa. They'd seen her strength, her sacrifice, but Lyra offered power, alliances, warriors, a future without the risk of an untested Omega. I'd chosen Tessa, but the pack's loyalty was a thread stretched, thin. I stood in the war room, Kael at my side, the council's faces grim. Lyra sat among them, her presence a challenge I couldn't ignore. "Tessa's proven herself," I said, my voice a growl. "She crossed fire, gave her past. What more do you want?" "Results," Vren said, his eyes cold. "An heir, stability. Your Omega's loyalty is noted, but her womb is unproven. Lyra's pack offers more." Lyra leaned forward, her smile sharp. "My sister is ready to bear your heir, Fenric. Strong blood, strong ties. Tessa's a gamble you can't afford." "My," Wolf roared, claws itching to silence her, but I held it back. "Tessa's my choice," I said. "She's more than a vessel. She's my mate." The words slipped out, raw and real, and the room stilled. Kael's eyes widened, Vren's narrowed, and Lyra's smile faltered. "Mate," I hadn't meant to say it, but my wolf had claimed her, and denying it was a lie I couldn't sustain. Tessa was mine, not just in duty, but in heart, and the pack would have to accept it or face me. "Mate," Lyra laughed, the sound cutting. "A slave. You're blinded, Fenric. The pack won't follow a lovesick alpha. They'll follow strength," I said, stepping forward. "Tessa's shown it, you've seen it. Test her again, and you test me." Vren stood, his voice heavy. "Then prove it. If she's your mate, show us the bond's fruit. An heir within the year, or we'll demand a new choice." The ultimatum was a chain binding us both. I nodded, my jaw tight, knowing Tessa's heart wasn't mine to command. As I left, I found her in the garden, the new locket glinting in the dusk. Her eyes met mine, wary but warm, and I knelt beside her. "They want an heir," I said, my voice rough. "Within a year." Her face paled, her hand clutching the locket. "And if I can't?" "Then we fight," I said, taking her hand. "Together." Her eyes searched mine, fear mingling with something softer. "Mate," she whispered, testing the word, "is that what I am?" "It's what I want," I said, my wolf howling with need. "If you'll have me." She didn't answer, but her hand stayed in mine, her warmth a vow. Lyra's storm was coming, the pack's doubts a tide we'd face. But as I held her, my wolf knew we'd fight for her, for us, even if it meant tearing down everything I'd built to keep her.
The council's demand, an heir within a year, was a weight heavier than the locket I'd lost, heavier even than the new one Fenric had given me. Its wolf's head gleamed at my throat, a symbol of Ashenfang, of the future they demanded and the bond Fenric had named. Mate. The word was a spark, igniting fear and something warmer, something I'd never dared name. I sat in the garden, Fenric's words echoing. "If you'll have me." I wanted to, but trust was a wound that hadn't healed. The pack's eyes had softened since the ritual, their respect grudging but real. I'd crossed fire, given my mother's locket, and they'd seen my strength. But Lyra's shadow lingered, her alliance a threat that could unravel everything. Fenric had called me his mate, a claim that stirred my heart even as it scared me. I'd been a slave, a tool, never a partner. Could I be his? He found me by the pond, his face drawn but his eyes steady. You're quiet, he said, sitting beside me, his warmth a quiet anchor. Your pack wants an heir, I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. They want me to prove I'm your mate. He nodded, his jaw tight. They do. But it's not just them, Tessa. I want it too, not for them, but for us. His words were a vow, raw and real. I touched the locket, its weight a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd gained. I'm scared, I admitted. I've never been wanted like this. Not for me. You are, he said, his hand finding mine. I want you, Tessa. Not just for an heir, but for you. His eyes held no deception, only a fierce hope that mirrored my own. I leaned into him, my heart racing. I want to try, I said, the words a leap. I want to be yours. He smiled, a sunrise breaking through his scars, and kissed me softly, his touch gentle but sure. The bond between us grew, fragile but rooted, like a seed in the garden's earth. Weeks later, when my body changed, a quiet certainty settled. I was carrying his child, our child, a future we'd fight for. The pack's doubts didn't fade, Lyra's threats a storm on the horizon. But as Fenric held me, his hand on my still flat belly, I knew we'd face it together. I was no longer the broken Omega, but Tessa, his mate, his choice. The locket at my throat was a vow, not of loss but of hope. A promise that we'd build a home, a family, a love stronger than any fire, any pack, any enemy.